Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy that flows through space and time. For millennia, the Jedi have served as guardians of this mystical power, believing themselves attuned to the will of the Force itself. But what happens when something arrives that exists entirely outside the Force? Something so powerful that reality itself bends at its whim, something that views the entire galaxy as nothing more than an amusing curiosity. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant stood as it had for 1,000 generations, its 5 spires reaching toward the sky like fingers grasping at wisdom. Inside the council chamber, 12 of the Order's wisest members sat in their traditional circle, discussing the clone wars that consumed the galaxy. Master Yoda's ears twitched with concern as Master Windu described the latest separatist attack on the Outer Rim. Then reality hiccuped. Every Jedi in the temple felt it simultaneously, a wrongness that made their connection to the Force shudder like a plucked string. It wasn't darkness, wasn't light, wasn't anything they recognized. It simply was, and it was impossible. In the center of the council chamber, where nothing had been a heartbeat before, a human figure materialized. He wore strange clothing, a Starfleet uniform, though none present would recognize it, and his face carried an expression of infinite amusement. The man looked around the circle of Jedi Masters with eyes that held eternity. "Oh my," Q said, spreading his arms wide. "How delightfully primitive. Tell me, do you people still believe in destiny?" 12 lightsabers ignited as one, their blue and green blades humming with deadly intent. Master Windu rose from his seat, his expression stern. "Identify yourself. How did you breach our defenses?" Q snapped his fingers. Every lightsaber vanished, replaced by colorful flowers. The Jedi Masters stared at their hands in shock as Q circled the chamber, examining them like specimens in a laboratory. "Defenses? Oh, you mean those adorable little energy barriers? Please, I've rearranged supernovas that were more challenging." He paused before Yoda, leaning down with exaggerated interest. "And you must be the wise old one. How predictable." "Strong in the Force, you are not," Yoda said carefully, his eyes narrowing. "Yet power you possess. Explain yourself, you will." "The Force." Q laughed, a sound that seemed to echo from everywhere and nowhere. "That quaint little energy field you people worship? I'm afraid I exist somewhat beyond such limited concepts. Allow me to introduce myself properly." He snapped his fingers again, and suddenly all 12 Jedi found themselves seated in what appeared to be a courtroom, with Q elevated on a judge's bench, wearing elaborate robes. "I am Q, and I represent the Q Continuum, a collective of beings so advanced that your entire reality is, to us, roughly equivalent to a petri dish. Fascinating to observe, occasionally worth interacting with, but ultimately..." He waved his hand dismissively. "Quite limited in scope." The courtroom dissolved, returning them to the council chamber. But now Q sat in Master Windu's seat, feet propped up casually. "Here's your situation, children. I've been observing your galaxy for approximately..." He checked a pocket watch that materialized in his hand. "3 of your minutes, and I'm already appalled. You've been at war for how long? Millennia. And you keep repeating the same tired pattern. Light versus dark, Jedi versus Sith, rise and fall and rise and fall. Honestly, it's tedious." "Our conflicts are complex," Master Windu said, his voice controlled despite the violation of his seat. "You couldn't possibly understand the nuances." "Couldn't I?" Q interrupted. With a gesture, holographic images filled the air. The fall of Revan, the rule of two, the Sith Wars, Darth Bane, hundreds of conflicts spanning millennia, all playing simultaneously. I've reviewed your entire history, every battle, every fallen Jedi, every Sith Lord's predictable grab for power. You're stuck in a loop, and frankly, I'm not convinced your civilization deserves to continue. The temperature in the room dropped. Deserve? Master Plo Koon asked quietly. Yes, deserve. Q stood, and suddenly his voice carried weight that pressed down on every being in the temple. I am placing your galaxy on trial. Your crime, perpetual war, an inability to evolve beyond your base nature, and the arrogant belief that your force gives you purpose when all it does is bind you to an endless cycle of violence. Preposterous, Master Windu declared. You have no authority. Q snapped his fingers. Master Windu froze mid-sentence, still as a statue. The other Jedi moved to help him, but Q raised a finger in warning. I have all the authority. I am authority. I could erase your entire galaxy from existence with a thought. Instead, I'm giving you a chance, a trial. Prove to me that this galaxy can break its cycle, that beings bound by the Force can choose something other than endless war, and I'll leave you to your devices. Fail, he smiled coldly, and I'll simply remove the problem. He unfroze Master Windu, who gasped and staggered. Impossible, Windu breathed. No one has such power. No one you've met, Q corrected. Now every trial needs a defendant, someone to represent your galaxy's potential or lack thereof, and I've already chosen the perfect candidate. Q's smile widened. A young man teetering on the edge between light and dark, prophesied to bring balance to your precious force, currently fighting your pointless war. I believe you call him the Chosen One. Master Yoda's eyes widened in alarm. Anakin Skywalker. Got it in one, Q said cheerfully. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. He grinned at the confused Jedi. Oh wait, wrong reality. Anyway, court is now in session. Let the trial begin. Q vanished in a flash of white light, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. And across the galaxy, on the war-torn world of Christophsis, Anakin Skywalker suddenly felt eyes upon him, eyes that saw everything he was, everything he'd done, and everything he might become. Anakin Skywalker ducked behind a demolished building as battle droids marched past, their mechanical voices coordinating another assault on the Republic's defensive line. Obi-Wan Kenobi crouched beside him, studying a tactical holopad that showed their dwindling options. The Battle of Christophsis was not going well. Their reinforcements just keep coming, Obi-Wan muttered. We need to fall back to the secondary position before... He stopped mid-sentence. Anakin had gone rigid, his eyes unfocused, one hand pressed against his temple. Through their force bond, Obi-Wan felt his former Padawan's sudden spike of confusion and alarm. Anakin, what is it? Before Anakin could answer, the world shifted. One moment they were in a war zone, surrounded by smoke and the distant thunder of artillery. The next, they stood in a blank white void that stretched infinitely in every direction. No ground beneath their feet, yet they stood. No sky above, yet light came from everywhere. The sounds of battle had vanished completely. Welcome, Anakin Skywalker, a voice said from behind them. I've been expecting you. Both Jedi spun, lightsabers igniting, to find Q standing there with his arms crossed, looking entirely too pleased with himself. He wore the same Starfleet uniform, though neither Jedi recognized it as such. To them, he appeared to be an ordinary human in strange clothing, yet something about his presence felt fundamentally wrong. Who are you? Anakin demanded, his blue blade held ready. How did you bring us here? Straight to business. No wonder you're the Chosen One. Q circled them slowly, hands behind his back. As I just finished explaining to your Jedi Council, though I suppose from your perspective, that conversation hasn't happened yet. Or has it? Time is so wonderfully flexible when you're omnipotent. He waved off their confused expressions. Never mind. I am Q, and you, young Skywalker, are my primary defendant in the trial of your galaxy. Trial? Obi-Wan interjected, moving protectively closer to Anakin. What trial? We've done nothing wrong. Haven't you? Q snapped his fingers, and suddenly the white void filled with images. Jedi younglings training with practiced lightsabers, Sith lords commanding armies, planets burning in ancient wars, Jedi purges, the cycle repeating across millennia. This galaxy has been at war with itself for thousands of years. Light side, dark side, endless conflict. And you, he pointed at Anakin, are supposedly prophesied to bring balance to this mess. So I'm curious, can you? Anakin deactivated his lightsaber, studying Q with suspicion. The Force doesn't touch you. I can't sense you at all. You're like a void. How perceptive. That's because your Force is localized to this galaxy, this reality. I exist beyond such limitations. Q materialized a chair from nothing and sat, crossing his legs. Think of it this way. You people swim in an ocean and think you understand water. I observe your ocean from space, where I can see a billion other oceans you never dreamed existed. Enough riddles, Obi-Wan said firmly. State your purpose, or return us to the battlefield. Your battlefield? Q laughed. Oh, it's still there. Your clone troopers are still dying. Your droids are still marching. I've merely removed you from that particular moment. We could spend years here, and when I return you, not a single second will have passed. He leaned forward. And my purpose is simple. I'm testing whether this galaxy deserves to continue existing. The casual threat sent a chill through both Jedi. You claim to have the power to destroy an entire galaxy, Obi-Wan asked, his skepticism barely masking his concern. Q stood, and suddenly the white void transformed into Coruscant, but not the Coruscant they knew. This version burned. The Jedi Temple collapsed in flames, starships fell from orbit like dying stars, and billions of beings screamed in terror. This is one possible future, Q said quietly, all humor gone from his voice. This is what happens if you fail my trial. Then the vision shifted. The same city, but thriving. Jedi and non-Force users working together. No war, no conflict. Genuine peace spanning the galaxy. And this is what could be if you succeed. But I need to know if you're capable of choosing the latter over the former. Anakin's hands clenched into fists. We don't need some outside force deciding our fate. We'll determine our own future. Will you? Q moved like lightning, suddenly standing inches from Anakin's face. Tell me, Chosen One, right now at this very moment, which path are you walking? The Jedi teach detachment, yet you're secretly married. You crave power to protect those you love, yet power leads to the dark side. You serve the Republic, yet its leader is manipulating you. Q's eyes seem to see straight through him. You're already failing your own test, and you don't even realize it. Anakin stepped back, his face pale. How do you? I know everything, Q interrupted. Every secret, every fear, every choice you'll face. The question is, will you make the right ones? He turned to Obi-Wan. And you, Master Kenobi, perfect Jedi, always following the code. Yet you feel the Council is failing. You sense something wrong but do nothing. Is that wisdom or cowardice? Obi-Wan's jaw tightened. We do what we must to preserve peace. Peace, Q gestured, and they stood suddenly on a battlefield. Clones and droids locked in combat, the ground soaked with blood. This is your peace. 10,000 worlds burning while you debate philosophy. We're trying to end the war, Anakin shot back. Are you? Or are you perpetuating it? Q walked between the frozen combatants. Look at them. Clones bred for war, droids programmed for destruction. Neither chose their fate, neither had a chance to be anything else. And you lead them to slaughter, believing it serves some greater good. The battlefield vanished, returning them to the white void. Q's expression softened slightly. I'm not here to torment you, Skywalker. I'm here to see if you, if any of you, can transcend your limitations. The Force binds you to destiny, but destiny is just another word for imprisonment. Can you break free? Can you choose something other than what's expected? Why do you care? Anakin asked, genuinely confused. Q paused, something flickering across his face. Was it boredom, curiosity, loneliness? Because I've watched 1,000 civilizations rise and fall. Most follow predictable patterns. But occasionally, rarely, one surprises me. One evolves beyond what should be possible. And that, he smiled slightly, that's worth watching. He raised his hand. Return to your war, Chosen One. But know that I'm watching now. Every choice you make, every path you walk, it's all evidence in your trial. And when the time comes for judgment, the white void began to fade. I'll be very interested to see what you've become. Reality snapped back. Anakin and Obi-Wan stumbled as the sounds of battle crashed over them once more. They stood in exactly the same position behind the demolished building, their lightsabers still ignited. The tactical holopad showed the same information Obi-Wan had been studying. Not a single second had passed. Did you, Obi-Wan began. Feel that? See him? Anakin finished, his voice shaken. Yes. Above Christophsis, in the void of space, Q floated beside a Republic Star Destroyer. Watching the battle unfold with ancient eyes. Let's see what you're made of, Chosen One, he murmured. Let's see if you're worth saving. The Jedi Council reconvened in emergency session mere hours after Q's initial appearance, though the entity himself had vanished as mysteriously as he'd arrived. Masters from across the galaxy joined via hologram, their blue-tinted projections filling the chamber as word spread of the unprecedented intrusion. Master Yoda sat in his customary place, his eyes closed in deep meditation. He'd spent the intervening time reaching into the Force, seeking any trace of the being who called himself Q. What he'd found, or rather, hadn't found, disturbed him deeply. It was as if Q existed in a blind spot of the Force itself, a null point around which reality bent. We must assume this Q entity poses a significant threat, Master Windu stated, his voice carrying the weight of command. He penetrated our defenses, demonstrated reality-warping abilities, and made threats against the entire galaxy. I propose we treat him as a hostile force and do what, exactly? Master Plo Koon interrupted gently. He made our lightsabers vanish with a gesture. Froze you in time, Mace. What weapon do we possess that could harm such a being? The Force, Windu began. Does not touch him, Yoda said, opening his eyes. Beyond the Force, he is. Beyond our understanding. Powerful, yes, but more than power, different. A test he claims to bring. Dismiss his words, we cannot. Surely you don't believe his threats, Master Ki-Adi-Mundi asked from his hologram. To destroy an entire galaxy, it's madness. Is it? Master Shak Tai leaned forward. We've encountered Force users of immense power. Sidious, if the Sith Lord exists, would be one. But this Q demonstrated something beyond the Force. He exists outside our fundamental framework of reality. If he claims such power, we cannot afford to assume he's bluffing. Q's voice echoed through the chamber, though he remained invisible. Oh, I'm definitely not bluffing. Every Jedi's hand went to their lightsaber, but Q materialized casually in the center of the room, leaning against thin air as if it were a comfortable wall. "Please, don't get up on my account. I just thought I'd check in on your deliberations. See how the Great Jedi Council plans to handle their trial." "Show yourself you did," Yoda said calmly, though his ears twitched with tension. "Purpose, what is it?" "My purpose?" Q pushed off from his invisible support and began walking around the circle. "To administer your first test, of course. You see, your order claims to be guardians of peace and justice. But I've noticed something curious. You serve the Republic without question, fight their wars, enforce their laws. But what happens when the Republic itself is corrupt? What do you do when peace and justice conflict?" He snapped his fingers, and a hologram appeared in the center of the chamber, Senator Palpatine's office. But this wasn't a normal recording. They watched as Palpatine met with Trade Federation leaders, orchestrated the Naboo crisis, manipulated Senate votes, played both sides of the Clone Wars. Then the image shifted, showing Palpatine's face transforming, revealing yellow Sith eyes and a cruel smile. Master Windu leaped to his feet. "That's Darth Sidious, yes," Q said cheerfully. "Your Supreme Chancellor is the Sith Lord you've been searching for. Has been for years, actually. Quite clever, really. Orchestrating an entire war, controlling both sides, all while sitting in the highest political office in the galaxy. And you," he gestured at the stunned Jedi, "never suspected a thing." The council chamber erupted in shocked voices. Masters spoke over each other, their hollow communicators flickering with urgent questions. Master Windu's hand trembled on his lightsaber hilt. "If this is true..." "Oh, it's true," Q assured him. "I don't lie. I might be capricious. I might test you in uncomfortable ways, but I don't fabricate evidence. Palpatine is Sidious. The entire war is his design. And here's your test. What do you do about it?" "We arrest him immediately," Windu said firmly. "We expose his deception." Q held up a hand. "Ah, but there's the complication. You see, I haven't just told you. I've told him that I've told you." Q grinned wickedly. "Right now, Sidious knows you know his identity. He's preparing his response. Order 66, that nasty little command buried in your clone troopers' brains, could be activated at any moment. Or he might flee, or he might attack, or he might call your bluff and claim you're committing treason against the Republic." "This is madness," Master Mundi protested. "You've destabilized the entire political structure." "I've revealed the truth," Q corrected. "The instability was always there, buried under lies. I've simply accelerated your timeline. Now you must make choices without the luxury of ignorance." He materialized a chair and sat, crossing his legs. "So, Council, what's your move? Storm the Senate and arrest the Chancellor, risking civil war? Wait and gather more evidence, giving Sidious time to consolidate power? Flee and regroup, abandoning the Republic you serve? Or perhaps..." He leaned forward. "Perhaps you realize that the Jedi Order itself is part of the problem, too entangled with politics to see clearly." Master Yoda closed his eyes, breathing slowly. Through the Force, he sensed the truth in Q's words. The dark presence that had clouded their vision for years suddenly made sense. Palpatine. It had been there all along, and they'd been blind. "A choice you force upon us," Yoda said quietly. "Yet choices we always had. Blind we were, comfortable in our certainty. A mirror you hold up." "Now you're catching on," Q said approvingly. "This is a test of wisdom, Master Yoda. Can the Jedi Order adapt when their foundational assumptions are shattered? Can you make the hard choice when there's no clear right answer?" Master Plo Koon spoke carefully. "If we move against the Chancellor without absolute proof, we'll be branded traitors. The Republic will turn against us. The war effort will collapse. And if you don't move against him," Master Shakti countered, He'll execute whatever plan he has, and we'll be destroyed anyway. We're trapped." "Exactly," Q said, standing. "Trapped by your own rigid thinking. You serve the Republic, but the Republic is led by your enemy. You uphold the law, but the law is being twisted against you. You seek peace, but peace serves the Sith's agenda. Every option leads to disaster because you've painted yourselves into a corner through centuries of inflexibility." Master Windu's frustration boiled over. "What would you have us do? You claim to test us, but you've rigged the test to be impossible." "Impossible within your limited framework," Q agreed. "But perhaps that's the point. Perhaps the solution requires thinking beyond the Jedi Code, beyond the Republic's laws, beyond your precious light and dark dichotomy." He walked to the window, looking out over Coruscant's endless cityscape. "In my experience, the most interesting solutions come from those willing to break their own rules. The dark side that path leads to," Yoda warned. "Does it?" Q turned back. "Or does your fear of the dark side prevent you from doing what's necessary? You're so terrified of becoming what you fight that you tie your own hands. Meanwhile, Sidious suffers no such limitations." He paused. "Tell me, if you knew that embracing anger for just one moment would save 1,000,000 lives, would you do it? Or would you let those millions die to keep your conscience clean?" The silence that followed was deafening. Q had struck at the heart of the Jedi philosophy, the absolute rejection of the dark side, even when compassion might demand otherwise. "Think on it," Q said, moving toward the center of the chamber. "I'll give you one standard day to formulate your response to the Sidious revelation. Whatever you decide, it'll be evidence in your trial. Choose wisely." He raised his hand to snap his fingers, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing. I've placed a temporal barrier around Coruscant. No one leaves, no communications get out. Your decision happens in isolation, without interference. Just you, your wisdom, and your limitations." He snapped his fingers and vanished. The council sat in stunned silence. Finally, Master Windu spoke. His voice barely controlled. "We need to verify his claims about Palpatine." "No time for verification we have," Yoda said heavily. "Truth in his words, I sense. Tested we are, yes, but test reveals only what already exists. Our blindness, our arrogance, our failure to see the darkness beside us." "Then what do we do?" Master Plo Koon asked. Yoda stood slowly, leaning on his Geimer stick. "A choice we make. But first, understand we must. Test we face, but real it is. Stakes, genuine they are. Right answer, there may not be. Only best answer we can find." "Then we find it together," Master Windu said, his resolve hardening. "And pray that our best is enough." In the depths of the Senate building, in an office decorated with artworks from 1,000 worlds, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine sat behind his desk with his fingers steepled, a slight smile on his grandfatherly face. To any observer, he appeared to be simply reviewing reports from the latest war briefings. But beneath his calm exterior, Darth Sidious's mind raced with cold calculation. Q had told him the Jedi knew his identity. Fascinating. The moment Q had appeared to him, materialized in his office, with that insufferable smirk, Palpatine had reached into the Force, seeking to crush this intruder's mind or bend him to his will. The dark side was absolute. No one resisted Sidious's power. Q had yawned. "Are you quite finished?" Q had asked, examining his fingernails, while Palpatine's most devastating Force attacks simply dissipated around him like smoke. "I have to say, your Force is impressive by local standards. Very dramatic, all that lightning and choking. But it's rather like watching someone throw stones when I could rearrange the fundamental structure of reality." To demonstrate, Q had snapped his fingers. Suddenly, Palpatine found himself standing in the Jedi Temple, watching the council meeting where Q revealed his identity. He heard every word, saw their reactions, felt their shock and determination. Then, just as suddenly, he was back in his office, and Q was offering him a cup of tea that definitely hadn't existed a moment before. "Milk, sugar?" Q asked pleasantly. That's when Palpatine understood. This being was beyond the Force, beyond anything in his experience. And Q was playing a game with pieces that included the Sith Lord himself. Now, alone in his office, Palpatine considered his options. Order 66 was ready, but Q had complicated matters. The Jedi knew, but were apparently trapped on Coruscant. They'd be planning a move against him. Normally, he'd have accelerated his timeline, activated the clones, and watched the Order fall. But Q's presence changed the equation. This entity claimed to be testing the galaxy, testing Palpatine as much as the Jedi. A soft sound made him turn. Q sat in the corner of the office, feet propped on an expensive artifact, eating what appeared to be popcorn. "Don't you knock?" Palpatine asked, his voice carefully controlled. "I'm omnipotent. Knocking seems redundant." Q tossed a piece of popcorn into his mouth. "Besides, I wanted to watch you think. Sith Lords are always fascinating when they're scheming. All that delicious calculation and barely restrained ambition." Palpatine stood, straightening his robes. "You've interfered with plans decades in the making. I assume this is part of your trial." "Oh, absolutely," Q confirmed. "See, here's what interests me about you, Palpatine. You've manipulated an entire galaxy into war, positioned yourself as savior while being the architect of its destruction, and you've done it all with remarkable patience. It's actually quite impressive." "Yet you disapprove," Palpatine said, reading Q's tone. "I'm neutral," Q corrected. "I'm testing whether your galaxy deserves to continue. That includes testing you. The Jedi have their trial, and you have yours. Fair is fair." Palpatine circled his desk slowly. "And what test do you have for the dark side?" Q grinned. "Simple. I want to see what you do when your carefully laid plans are thrown into chaos. The Jedi know who you are. Your hidden identity is exposed. Your advantage of secrecy is gone. So..." Q stood, and suddenly the office expanded into an infinite space where two beings faced each other. What does Darth Sidious do when he can't hide in the shadows anymore? "I eliminate the threat," Palpatine said coldly. "As I have always done." "But that's predictable," Q complained. "Order 66, kill the Jedi, declare yourself Emperor. I've already seen that timeline. Boring, disappointing. You're supposed to be the ultimate schemer, yet you're following a script written by fear and power hunger." Palpatine's eyes flashed yellow for a moment. "You dare..." "I dare everything," Q interrupted. "That's the point of being omnipotent. Now, let me show you something." He waved his hand, and visions filled the space around them. In one vision, Palpatine activated Order 66 immediately. The clones turned on their Jedi commanders, gunning them down across the galaxy. But Q was there in each scene, watching, recording, judging. And when the last Jedi fell, Q snapped his fingers, and the entire galaxy simply ended. Erased, everyone gone because they'd failed his test. In another vision, Palpatine fled Coruscant, abandoning his political identity to rebuild as Sidious elsewhere. But Q followed, always watching, always testing, never letting him hide. And eventually, the galaxy descended into chaos so complete that Q ended it mercifully. In a third vision, Palpatine actually approached the Jedi Council and revealed himself willingly, offering to end the war in exchange for something. The vision faded before showing the outcome. "You see the problem?" Q asked, dismissing the visions. Every path you're considering leads to failure. Not because you're not clever, you're brilliant actually, but because you're thinking within your limitations. Jedi versus Sith, light versus dark, power through domination. It's all so binary. The dark side is ultimate power, Palpatine said with certainty. It is the natural order. Is it? Q materialized a chair and sat backwards on it, arms folded on the backrest. Tell me, Sidious, have you ever wondered why the Force is split into light and dark at all? Why not just Force? Your entire galaxy is trapped in a perpetual cycle because you're all slaves to this false dichotomy. The Jedi suppress emotion and wonder why they're rigid. The Sith embrace passion and wonder why they're unstable. And neither side realizes the problem is the division itself. Palpatine considered this, his brilliant mind racing. You're suggesting there's something beyond the light and dark sides of the Force. I'm suggesting your Force is a prison, Q said bluntly. It gives you power while binding you to predetermined patterns. Jedi rise, Sith corrupt them, Sith destroy, Jedi rebuild, repeat forever. And you, he pointed at Palpatine, for all your scheming, are just playing your assigned role in the cycle. I serve no one's design, Palpatine hissed. Don't you? Q stood, and suddenly they were surrounded by images of Sith lords throughout history. Darth Bane, Darth Revan, ancient Sith emperors. Look at them. Everyone believed they were unique, that their plan would succeed where others failed. Everyone thought they'd break the cycle, and everyone was eventually defeated, allowing the Jedi to rise again. You're not special, Palpatine. You're just the latest iteration of a tired pattern. The words stung because, deep down, Palpatine had wondered the same thing. His plan was perfect, his execution flawless, yet he'd always known that eventually, somehow, the Jedi would return. Balance to the Force meant the cycle continuing forever. So what would you have me do? Palpatine asked, his voice dangerous. Abandon my plans, make peace with the Jedi. I don't care what you do, Q said honestly. I'm testing whether you're capable of original thought. Can Darth Sidious, Master Manipulator, conceive of a path that doesn't end in his own eventual destruction? Can you break your own pattern? He moved closer. The Jedi are being tested on whether they can act beyond their code. You're being tested on whether you can scheme beyond your ambition. Fail, and I'll consider your entire philosophy bankrupt. And if I succeed? Q smiled enigmatically. Then you'll have earned the right to play your game to its conclusion, whatever that may be. But know this, I'm watching every move now. Every choice matters. And if I determine that your approach to power is fundamentally unworthy of existence... He snapped his fingers, and for just a moment, Palpatine felt what it would be like to simply cease existing. Not death, not Force annihilation, just complete erasure from reality. Then the sensation passed. They stood in Palpatine's office once more, unchanged except for the knowledge that had passed between them. One day, Sidious, Q said, moving toward the door. I'm giving you the same timeline as the Jedi. One day to show me you're more than a predictable Sith Lord following an ancient script. Surprise me. He paused at the doorway. Oh, and Palpatine, I truly hope you do. It would be a shame to erase someone with your potential simply because you lacked imagination. Q vanished, leaving Darth Sidious alone with his thoughts, his plans, and the unsettling realization that for the first time in decades, he had no idea what his next move should be. Anakin Skywalker couldn't sleep. The battle on Christophsis had ended in a tense stalemate, Republic forces holding their position, separatists refusing to retreat. But the war felt distant now, almost irrelevant compared to the weight of Q's attention pressing down on his consciousness like a physical thing. He stood on the observation deck of the Republic Star Destroyer, staring out at the stars when reality fractured around him. One moment he was alone. The next, he stood in a vast chamber that defied geometry, walls that curved impossibly, floors that became ceilings, space that folded in on itself. And in the center of this impossible room stood multiple versions of himself. "Welcome to your ordeal, chosen one." Q's voice echoed from everywhere. "I thought it was time we had a proper conversation about your future. Or should I say, futures?" Anakin ignited his lightsaber, the blue blade casting dancing shadows across the fractured space. "What is this? Another test?" "Always so quick to violence," Q said, materializing beside him. "Put that away. You can't hurt me. And these..." He gestured at the other Anakins. "Are you? Or rather, they're what you become in various timelines. I thought you should meet them." The nearest Anakin stepped forward. He wore black robes, his face scarred, his eyes burning yellow with Sith corruption. But this wasn't the mechanical Vader. This was Anakin fully consumed by the dark side, yet still flesh and blood. "You're weak," Dark Anakin said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Still clinging to the Jedi's lies. I embraced my power. I became what we were always meant to be." "You became a monster," another Anakin said, stepping from the shadows. This one wore simple robes, his face lined with age and wisdom, his presence radiating calm, light side energy. "I chose the Jedi path completely, abandoned attachment, embraced the code, found peace." "Found emptiness," a third Anakin interjected. This one looked like a wanderer. No Jedi robes, no Sith corruption, just a man who'd walked away from it all. The Jedi asked too much, the Sith offered too little. So I left, found Padme, raised our children far from the war, let the galaxy burn while I protected what mattered. Q walked among the alternate Anakins like a curator in a museum. Fascinating, isn't it? Every choice creates a branching path. In one timeline, you fall completely to the dark side and burn the galaxy. In another, you become a perfect Jedi and lose everything that makes you human. In yet another, you abandon your destiny entirely and live in peaceful irrelevance. He turned to the original Anakin. "The question is, which one are you?" "I'm none of them," Anakin said firmly. "I'm me. I make my own choices." "Do you?" Q snapped his fingers, and suddenly they stood in the Jedi Council chamber. But Anakin watched himself, a phantom version, being denied the rank of master. He felt the anger, the humiliation, the sense of betrayal. The phantom Anakin's hand trembled toward his lightsaber. The scene shifted. Now they stood in Palpatine's office. Phantom Anakin listened as the Chancellor revealed himself as Darth Sidious, offered power, promised to save Padme. The choice hung in the air like a blade. "Stop," Anakin said, but Q continued the visions. Padme dying in childbirth. Obi-Wan's disappointment. The younglings in the temple. Each scene showed a moment where Anakin's choices led to darkness, and the path felt inevitable, like watching a star collapse into a black hole. "You see?" Dark Anakin said, stepping beside him. "It's already written. We fall. We always fall. The only question is whether we fight it pointlessly or embrace our destiny." "That's not destiny," Jedi Anakin countered. "That's surrender. We can resist the darkness. We must. And lose everything in the process," Wanderer Anakin added. "The Jedi demand we sacrifice our humanity for their philosophy. Is that really balance?" Q held up his hands, silencing them all. "Here's what fascinates me about you, Skywalker. You're supposed to bring balance to the Force, but what does that even mean? The Jedi think it means destroying the Sith. The Sith think it means embracing passion, but what if balance means something neither side has considered?" He waved his hand, and the alternate Anakins vanished. Now only Q and the original remained, standing in a void filled with swirling light and dark energy, the Force itself made visible. "Look at it," Q said. "Light and dark, constantly at war, eternally out of balance. The Jedi push toward pure light, suppressing the dark. The Sith embrace pure dark, rejecting the light. And the cycle continues forever, because neither side understands that the problem is the division itself." Anakin stared at the swirling energy, feeling its pull. "You're saying balance means what? Using both sides equally?" "I'm saying balance means transcending the binary entirely," Q replied. "Stop thinking of the Force as two opposing sides and start thinking of it as one unified whole. Emotion without corruption, serenity without detachment, power with responsibility, love without possession." He turned to Anakin. "That's what the prophecy might actually mean. Not destroying the Sith or perfecting the Jedi, but showing both sides they're wrong about everything." The weight of that possibility crashed over Anakin. "How? The Jedi code forbids attachment. The Sith philosophy demands domination. There's no middle ground." "Then create one," Q said simply. "You're the chosen one. You have the highest midi-chlorian count in galactic history. You're powerful enough to reshape how the Force is understood. But only if you stop following everyone else's rules and start making your own." Anakin's mind raced. "The Council would never accept—" "The Council is trapped in dogma," Q interrupted. "Sidious is trapped in ambition. Both are prisoners of their philosophies. You could be different. You could be the first Force user in millennia who's actually free." He leaned closer. "But it requires something terrifying. Thinking for yourself. Not obeying the Jedi, not serving the Sith, not even following destiny. Just making choices based on what you believe is right. Consequences be damned." "And what if I'm wrong?" Anakin asked quietly. Q smiled, and for the first time, it seemed genuine. "Then you'll fail spectacularly. But at least you'll fail trying something new, instead of repeating the same mistakes as 1,000 Jedi and Sith before you." He snapped his fingers, and they stood on the Star Destroyer's observation deck once more. "Think about it, Chosen One. Your trial isn't about passing some test I've designed. It's about proving you're capable of breaking the cycle that's imprisoned your galaxy for millennia." Q began to fade. "One more thing. Your wife is pregnant with twins. Congratulations. And before you ask, yes, she could die in childbirth. Multiple timelines confirm it. But whether she does depends entirely on the choices you make in the next few weeks. No pressure." He vanished completely, leaving Anakin alone with the stars, the weight of prophecy, and the terrifying freedom of an uncertain future. Anakin's hands trembled as he gripped the observation deck railing. Padme. Twins. The future he'd glimpsed in nightmares suddenly felt both more real and less certain. Q had shown him paths, all the ways he could fall, all the ways he could sacrifice himself for ideals, all the ways he could run. But Q had also suggested something he'd never considered, that maybe all those paths were wrong, that maybe the Chosen One's destiny wasn't to serve the Jedi or the Sith, but to prove both philosophies were incomplete. The idea was terrifying. It was heresy to the Jedi. It was weakness to the Sith. It was possible. For the first time in years, Anakin felt something other than the constant pull between light and dark. He felt the possibility of something else entirely. And it scared him more than any vision of the future ever had. The Jedi Temple's meditation chamber had never felt so charged with tension. Master Yoda sat in deep contemplation, his ancient mind reaching into the Force for guidance, while Master Windu paced like a caged Nexu. Across the galaxy, Q's temporal barrier ensured their crisis remained isolated. No calls for help, no Republic reinforcements, just the Jedi Order facing its greatest challenge alone. Then reality shimmered, and they weren't alone. 3 figures materialized in the meditation chamber, each radiating impossible presence. They appeared humanoid, dressed in variations of the same style as Q, but their bearings suggested authority that made even the omnipotent trickster seem diminished. "Q," one of them said, her voice carrying the weight of eternity. "What have you done?" Q appeared instantly, and for the first time since arriving in the Star Wars galaxy, he looked almost sheepish. "Q, Q, and Q," he greeted them. "How lovely of you to drop by. I was just conducting a simple observation." "You've placed an entire galaxy on trial," the male Q said, his tone stern. "Without continuum approval, without consideration for the universal laws governing reality intersection. This is exactly the kind of reckless behavior that led to your previous sanctions." The Jedi watched this exchange with growing confusion. Master Windu found his voice. "Who are you?" The female Q turned to him, and her gaze made him feel like an insect under scrutiny. "We are the Q Continuum, the collective consciousness from which this troublesome individual originates. And we're here to discuss his interference in your reality." "Interference," the original Q protested. "I prefer to think of it as constructive evaluation. You revealed a Sith Lord's identity and trapped an entire planet in temporal stasis," the third Q interrupted. "That goes beyond observation into direct manipulation. The Continuum has rules about this." Q crossed his arms defensively. "This galaxy needed intervention. They're trapped in an endless cycle of war, light versus dark, the same patterns repeating for millennia. Someone needed to push them toward evolution." "That's not your decision to make," the female Q stated. "Every species, every reality has the right to develop at its own pace. You can't simply impose trials because you're bored." "I'm not bored," Q insisted, then paused. "Well, I am, but that's not the point. This galaxy has something unique, the Force, a mystical energy field that binds reality together. But it's also a prison. These beings are slaves to light and dark, never questioning whether the dichotomy itself is the problem. They deserve a chance to transcend their limitations." Master Yoda spoke quietly. "Assume you can, that we need saving. Arrogant that assumption is." The female Q turned to Yoda with something approaching respect. "The little one speaks wisdom. Q, you've always had a savior complex. You see potential and immediately want to accelerate it, forcing growth rather than allowing natural development." "Natural development?" Q gestured wildly. "They've been naturally developing for millennia and achieved nothing but an endless war cycle. The Jedi become rigid, the Sith become corrupt. They destroy each other. Rinse and repeat. Without intervention, this pattern continues until the galaxy destroys itself. Or until it finds its own solution," the male Q countered. "As it's supposed to. Q, we're not debating the merits of your observations. We're addressing your methods. You cannot place ultimatums on entire civilizations. You cannot threaten erasure to force evolution." Q's expression shifted, becoming more serious. "Then what would you have me do? Watch them burn? I've observed 1,000 civilizations fall into the same trap. For once, I want to see one succeed. Is that so wrong?" A moment of heavy silence filled the meditation chamber. The 3 Continuum members exchanged glances, some form of communication passing between them that transcended spoken language. Finally, the female Q spoke. "We acknowledge your intentions, however misguided your methods, and truthfully," she looked around the Jedi Temple, "this reality does present an unusual situation. The Force is unlike anything we've encountered, a mystical energy that genuinely binds their reality together while simultaneously constraining it. The paradox is fascinating. "So you'll allow my trial to continue?" Q asked hopefully. "With conditions," the male Q said firmly. "First, you remove the temporal barrier. These beings deserve the freedom to contact their allies if they choose. Second, you may observe and ask questions, but you cannot directly threaten erasure. These people will succeed or fail on their own merits, not under duress." "But," Q began. "Third," the third Q continued, "you will acknowledge that your presence has already altered their timeline. Your responsibility is now to minimize further damage, not to continue manipulating events toward your preferred outcome." Q deflated slightly. "That rather defeats the purpose of a trial." "Your trial was always about you, not them," the female Q said gently. "You want to see beings transcend their limitations because you struggle with your own. The continuum is infinite power with nothing to strive for. You seek meaning through testing others, but meaning cannot be imposed. It must be discovered." The words struck deeper than any reprimand. Q looked away, and for a moment, the ancient being appeared almost vulnerable. Master Yoda observed this exchange with growing understanding. "Test yourself, you do, through us. Seek answers you cannot find within the continuum." Q met Yoda's eyes, and something passed between them. Recognition of kindred spirits, both trapped by their own limitations. "Perhaps," Q admitted, "perhaps I've been trying to prove that power without purpose can still find meaning. That beings with ultimate capability can still choose to grow rather than stagnate." "Then let them show you," the female Q said. "Without threats, without manipulation, simply observe and trust that sentient beings have the capacity to surprise you." The three Continuum members turned to the Jedi Council. "On behalf of Q and our collective, we apologize for this intrusion into your reality. What happens next is entirely your choice. The temporal barrier is removed. Q will remain as an observer, but cannot threaten your existence." Master Windu found his voice. "And Palpatine?" "The information about Sidious is accurate," the male Q confirmed. "That particular revelation cannot be undone. How you address it is your decision." "One more thing," the female Q added, looking directly at Yoda. "Your force is remarkable, but it is not absolute. There are forms of power, of existence beyond it. Q represents one such form. We tell you this not to diminish your beliefs, but to expand your perspective. The universe is far larger and stranger than your galaxy knows." She turned to Q. "We'll be watching. Try not to destroy anything." The three Continuum members vanished, leaving Q alone with the Jedi Council. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Q materialized a chair and sat heavily, looking uncharacteristically subdued. "Well," he said finally, "that was humiliating." Master Windu's hand remained on his lightsaber hilt. "Are we supposed to trust you now, after you threatened to erase our galaxy?" "I never actually intended to erase you," Q said. Then at Windu's sharp look added, "Probably. Maybe. The threat was meant to motivate, not to... Look, I'm not good at this. The continuum is right. I interfere because I'm searching for something I can't find in infinite power. Your galaxy, your force, your endless struggle between light and dark. It's fascinating because it's a problem I can't simply snap away. It requires genuine growth, real choice, authentic change." "So what now?" Master Plo Koon asked. Q stood, some of his usual energy returning. "Now you face your crisis without my interference. Sidious knows you know his identity. You must decide how to respond. I'll observe, perhaps offer occasional commentary, but the choices are yours." He moved toward the window. "For what it's worth, I genuinely hope you succeed. Not because I've placed stakes on it, but because I want to see if sentient beings can transcend their limitations when given the chance." He glanced back at Yoda. You said I assume you need saving. You're right. That was arrogant. But consider this. Maybe the question isn't whether you need saving, but whether you're willing to save yourselves by doing what's never been done before. Q vanished, leaving the Jedi Council alone with their impossible choice and the knowledge that, for better or worse, their galaxy would never be quite the same. Across Coruscant, in 1,000 locations simultaneously, reality rippled as Q's temporal barrier dissolved. Communications networks sparked back to life. Republic cruisers received delayed transmissions. And in the Senate building, Darth Sidious felt the change immediately. The cage was open. He could flee if he wished. He could activate Order 66. He could do anything. But Q's challenge echoed in his mind. Show me you're more than a predictable Sith Lord following an ancient script. Palpatine sat in his office, fingers steepled, considering options he'd never before contemplated. Every Sith before him had followed the same pattern. Accumulate power, destroy enemies, rule through fear, eventually fall to a stronger opponent or their own apprentice. The rule of two ensured this cycle continued forever. What if he broke the cycle? The thought was both heretical and intoxicating. For decades, he'd planned the destruction of the Jedi and the establishment of his empire. But Q's words lingered. You're not special. You're just the latest iteration of a tired pattern. A soft chime indicated a visitor. Palpatine opened the door remotely, unsurprised to see Anakin Skywalker enter. The young Jedi looked troubled, his emotions swirling in the Force like a storm barely contained. Chancellor, Anakin said carefully. We need to talk. Of course, my boy, Palpatine replied, his grandfatherly mask firmly in place. You seem distressed, the battle on Christophus weighing on you. Anakin closed the door and stood in the center of the office, his hand resting on his lightsaber hilt, not threatening, but ready. Q told me something. About you. Palpatine allowed a flicker of genuine curiosity to cross his face. This wasn't how he'd expected this confrontation to unfold. Did he? That meddlesome entity seems quite fond of revelations. He showed me timelines, Anakin continued, watching Palpatine carefully. Futures where I fall to the dark side, become your apprentice, help you destroy the Jedi, where you're revealed as Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord who's been orchestrating the Clone Wars from both sides. The moment hung between them like a blade. Palpatine could deny it, could manipulate, could attack. All the predictable responses available. Instead, he stood and walked to the window, looking out over Coruscant's endless cityscape. And do you believe these visions? Palpatine asked quietly. I don't know, Anakin admitted. That's why I'm here. To hear the truth from you. Palpatine turned, and for the first time in their relationship, he dropped the mask entirely. Yellow eyes flickered briefly before returning to their normal appearance. The truth, young Skywalker, is that I am Darth Sidious. I have orchestrated the Clone Wars. I have manipulated the Republic, the Separatists, the Jedi, and you toward my grand design for decades. Anakin's lightsaber was in his hand instantly, ignited, the blue blade humming with deadly potential. Then I'm here to arrest you. Are you? Sidious didn't move, didn't ignite his own hidden lightsaber. Q showed you timelines where we fight, where you either join me or attempt to kill me. He showed you the predictable patterns. So tell me, Skywalker, will you follow the script? Or will you do something neither the Jedi nor the Sith expect? The question caught Anakin off guard. His blade wavered slightly. What? Sidious moved closer, unafraid of the weapon. Q challenged me to transcend my limitations, to prove I'm more than a Sith following ancient patterns. He's challenged you similarly, hasn't he? Shown you that both the Jedi and Sith philosophies are incomplete prisons. You're trying to manipulate me, Anakin said, but his voice lacked certainty. Of course I am, Sidious acknowledged. Manipulation is my nature, but that doesn't make my words untrue. He gestured at the city beyond. Look at this galaxy. The Jedi seek peace through detachment and lose their humanity. The Sith seek power through passion and destroy themselves. And the cycle repeats endlessly because neither side questions whether their fundamental philosophy is flawed. So your solution is to destroy the Jedi and rule as Emperor, Anakin challenged. That was my solution, Sidious corrected. The predictable Sith response: accumulate power, eliminate opposition, establish dominance through fear. But Q was right. It's a tired pattern that inevitably leads to my eventual downfall. Some future Jedi or Sith would arise, overthrow me, and the cycle would continue. Anakin's confusion deepened. Then what do you want? Sidious walked to his desk and sat, looking suddenly older, more human. I want what I've always wanted, to reshape the galaxy. But perhaps I've been approaching it wrong. The Jedi forbid attachment, yet attachment is what makes beings care about something beyond themselves. The Sith embrace passion, yet unchecked passion leads to self-destruction. What if? He paused, considering. What if the solution is neither light nor dark, but something that incorporates both while being enslaved to neither? That's heresy to both philosophies, Anakin said. Precisely, Sidious agreed. Which is why it might actually work. Tell me, Skywalker, if you could reshape how the Force is understood, how it's used, how Force sensitives are trained and guided, what would you create? The question struck at the heart of Anakin's own crisis. He'd been wrestling with Q's suggestions, the possibility that the Chosen One's true purpose was to transcend the light-dark binary entirely. I don't know, Anakin admitted, but I know it wouldn't involve manipulating a galaxy into war. Fair point, Sidious acknowledged. My methods have been monstrous. Millions have died in my orchestrated conflict. I won't insult you by claiming otherwise or justifying it. But consider this. What if my methods could serve a different purpose? What if instead of destroying the Jedi to establish a Sith empire, we destroyed both philosophies to create something new? Anakin stared at the Sith Lord, trying to determine if this was elaborate manipulation or genuine proposition. You're asking me to trust you, after everything you've done. I'm asking you to think beyond trust and betrayal, Sidious replied. Q has forced both of us to confront our limitations. The Jedi Council will move against me soon. They'll attempt to arrest or kill me. I could activate Order 66, destroy them, and follow my original plan. Or... He stood, meeting Anakin's eyes directly. Or I could do something unprecedented. Work with the one being in this galaxy who might actually be powerful enough to transcend the Force's limitations. Why would you give up your plan? Anakin demanded. Because Q made me realize it's a plan I've already failed, Sidious said quietly. Every Sith Lord believes they'll be the one to break the cycle, to establish eternal dominance. Everyone is eventually defeated. I'm intelligent enough to recognize when I'm trapped in a pattern and wise enough to consider alternatives. Anakin's lightsaber finally deactivated. He didn't put it away, but he lowered it. What are you proposing? A conversation, Sidious said. A genuine exploration of what the galaxy could be if neither Jedi nor Sith philosophy dominated. You have the power of the Chosen One. I have the political infrastructure and strategic knowledge. Together, we might actually create something that breaks the cycle. Or you're lying, Anakin said. This could all be manipulation to turn me to the dark side, just like Q showed me. It could be, Sidious admitted. I'm still a Sith. I still crave power. But Q's challenge was to transcend my predictable patterns, and I find myself genuinely curious about whether it's possible. So I'm taking a risk, being honest with you, proposing cooperation rather than domination, and trusting that your power and my knowledge might create something neither of us could achieve alone. Before Anakin could respond, the office door burst open. Master Windu strode in, accompanied by Masters Kit Fisto, Agent Kohler, and Saisi Teen, their lightsabers drawn and ready. "Step away from him, Anakin," Windu commanded. "The Council knows what he is. We're here to arrest the traitor Palpatine for crimes against the Republic." Anakin found himself standing between the Jedi Masters and the Sith Lord, his own lightsaber uncertain in his hand. Q's voice echoed in his memory. "Your trial isn't about passing some test. It's about proving you're capable of breaking the cycle." "Anakin," Windu said firmly, "this is your chance to choose the right path. Stand with us against the darkness." "Choose wisely, young Skywalker," Sidious said quietly. "Follow the script everyone expects, or forge something new." In that moment, Anakin understood the true weight of Q's trial. This was it, the moment where he could follow the predetermined paths Q had shown him, or find a third option no one had considered. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what the Chosen One would choose. Anakin Skywalker stood frozen between two impossible choices, his mind racing through Q's visions, Sidious's proposition, and the Jedi Master's righteous determination. Every instinct told him to choose a side, join the Jedi in arresting Palpatine, or defend the Chancellor and fall to darkness. Those were the two paths Q had shown him, the predictable outcomes. But Q had also challenged him to find a third option. "No," Anakin said quietly, his lightsaber extinguishing. Both Sidious and Windu looked at him in surprise. "I'm not choosing either path." "Anakin, this isn't the time for philosophy," Master Windu said urgently. "Palpatine is Darth Sidious. He's orchestrated the Clone Wars, manipulated the Senate, and planned the destruction of our order. We must act now." "I know who he is," Anakin replied, his voice growing stronger. "Q told me, showed me timelines where I help you arrest him and where I defend him. Both paths lead to disaster. The Jedi become tyrants ruling through military force, or the Sith establish an empire built on fear. The cycle continues." Sidious watched with genuine interest. This wasn't manipulation. Anakin was actually thinking independently, making choices neither light nor dark philosophy had prepared him for. "Then what do you propose?" Master Fisto asked carefully. Anakin turned to face all of them, Jedi and Sith alike. Q placed the galaxy on trial, but he was really testing whether we can break our patterns. The Jedi philosophy of emotional detachment creates rigidity. The Sith philosophy of passionate domination creates destruction. Both are incomplete, and the conflict between them has burned the galaxy for millennia. "Heresy," Master Kohler muttered. "Truth," Anakin countered. "Master Windu, you're here to arrest Palpatine for his crimes. I agree he should answer for them. Millions have died in his orchestrated war. But if we arrest him through force, execute him, or imprison him, what changes? Another Sith will rise eventually. The cycle continues." He turned to Sidious. "And Chancellor, or Sidious, you proposed cooperation, creating something beyond light and dark. But you're still thinking in terms of power and control. You want to use my strength to establish your vision of order." "Perhaps," Sidious acknowledged. "Old habits." "So here's my proposition," Anakin said, his voice carrying the weight of decision. "Both philosophies end here. The Jedi Council surrenders its absolute authority over Force-sensitive training. The Sith Lord surrenders his political power and answers for his war crimes. And together, Jedi, Sith, and those who follow neither path, we build something new." The silence that followed was deafening. Master Windu's face hardened. "You're asking us to abandon the Jedi Code, to work with a Sith Lord responsible for galactic genocide." "I'm asking you to evolve," Anakin said. The code has value, discipline, selflessness, peace. But it's incomplete without acknowledging emotion, passion, love. Just as the Sith's power is meaningless without compassion, restraint, and genuine justice. Impossible, Master Teen said flatly. The dark side corrupts. It cannot be reconciled with the light. Can't it? Anakin held up his hand, and the Force swirled around it, both light and dark, mingling without consuming each other. I'm the chosen one, the highest midi-chlorian count in history, and I can feel both sides without being owned by either. The Force isn't two opposing energies. It's one energy we've artificially divided because we're afraid of what it might mean to embrace all of it. Q materialized in the corner of the office, sitting cross-legged in midair, eating popcorn. Oh, this is getting good. Don't mind me. Continue. Master Windu glared at the entity. This is your doing. I merely asked questions, Q said innocently. Young Skywalker here is making his own choices, and I have to say, I'm impressed. This is exactly the kind of original thinking I was hoping for. Sidious studied Anakin with newfound respect. You're proposing a complete reformation of Force philosophy. That would require dismantling power structures thousands of years old. The Jedi Council would lose its authority. The Sith tradition would end. Are you prepared for the consequences? Are you? Anakin challenged. You said Q made you question your path. Prove it. Surrender yourself to galactic justice. Not Jedi justice, not Senate justice. A tribunal that includes representatives from across the galaxy. Face the consequences of your actions, and in exchange, help build a new understanding of the Force that doesn't doom future generations to the same conflicts. You're insane, Master Kohler said. Sidious would never agree to that. Wouldn't I? Sidious moved to the window, his expression thoughtful. I've orchestrated the galaxy's politics for decades. I've manipulated billions of beings toward my vision of order, and Q was right. It was all predictable. A Sith Lord's inevitable path toward inevitable failure. He turned back. But what Skywalker proposes is genuinely unprecedented. A trial that exposes my crimes while allowing me to contribute to something that transcends both Jedi and Sith limitations. He smiled slightly. Actually quite clever. Master Windu's hand tightened on his lightsaber. This is madness. We can't trust a Sith Lord. We can't abandon the code. Anakin, you're suggesting we tear down everything the Order stands for. No, Anakin said firmly. I'm suggesting we admit that what the Order stands for is incomplete. You teach us to suppress emotion, yet emotion is what drives beings to protect each other. You forbid attachment, yet attachment is what gives life meaning. You serve the Republic, yet the Republic is corrupt. How is that balance? Q leaned forward, his ancient eyes gleaming with interest. He's right, you know. Your Jedi philosophy is built on fear. Fear of the dark side, fear of passion, fear of loss. You've created an entire tradition around avoiding half of what makes beings sentient. That's not wisdom. That's just control with better marketing than the Sith. And the Sith? Master Fisto asked pointedly. Oh, they're even worse, Q agreed cheerfully. All passion, no restraint. All power, no purpose beyond accumulation. They literally can't stop betraying and destroying each other. It's almost sad how predictable they are. Sidious's eyes flashed yellow briefly. Your assessment lacks nuance. Does it? Q challenged. Name one Sith Lord who didn't either get betrayed by their apprentice or become so consumed by power that they destroyed themselves. Go on, I'll wait. Sidious fell silent, unable to refute the point. Anakin pressed his advantage. Master Windu, you felt it too. The Council makes decisions based on tradition rather than wisdom. We've become so rigid that we can't adapt to changing circumstances. That's why we didn't see Sidious's manipulation. We were too certain of our superiority to question our assumptions. Master Windu's expression wavered, conflict warring across his features. Finally, he deactivated his lightsaber. What you're proposing would require approval from the entire Council, the Senate, and a complete restructuring of galactic governance. I know, Anakin said. It might fail, but at least it would be something new. A genuine attempt to break the cycle instead of perpetuating it. Q stood, brushing popcorn crumbs from his lap. Well, this has been absolutely fascinating. Young Skywalker, you've done something I rarely see. Surprised me. You've taken an impossible situation and found a third option no one predicted. He looked at Sidious and Windu. The question now is whether the rest of your galaxy is brave enough to follow his lead. What about Order 66? Master Teen asked suddenly. The clone inhibitor chips, are they still active? Sidious nodded slowly. They are. I could activate them at any moment and eliminate the Jedi Order across the galaxy. But, he looked at Anakin. If I agree to Skywalker's proposition, that weapon becomes meaningless. I would need to surrender that control as evidence of good faith. Do it, Anakin said. Deactivate Order 66, surrender yourself to a neutral tribunal, and work with us to create something better than what came before. The office fell silent as Darth Sidious, the most powerful Sith Lord in a millennium, considered surrendering everything he'd worked for. Q watched with the intensity of a being witnessing history pivot on a knife's edge. Finally, Sidious reached into his desk and pulled out a small device. The command override for Order 66, keyed to my biometrics and voice command. He placed it on the desk. If I destroy this and surrender myself, I'll be at your mercy. The Jedi could execute me. The Republic could imprison me. I'll have no power, no protection. Yes, Anakin said. That's what justice requires, and that's what evolution demands. Both of us, Jedi and Sith, giving up power to find something better. Sidious's hand hovered over the device for an eternal moment. Then, with decisive motion, he crushed it. The device sparked and died, taking with it the coded command that would have destroyed the Jedi Order. Done, Sidious said quietly. May the Force help us all. Q began clapping slowly. Magnificent. Absolutely magnificent. This is exactly what I wanted to see. Beings transcending their limitations through genuine choice rather than external compulsion. He turned to the group. Congratulations, you've just passed the trial. Not because you achieved perfection, but because you demonstrated the capacity for original thought and willing sacrifice. The trial is over, Master Windu asked suspiciously. My trial is, Q confirmed. What happens next is entirely up to you. But you've proven that your galaxy contains beings capable of breaking cycles, questioning dogma, and choosing uncertain evolution over comfortable stagnation. That's worth preserving. He began to fade. Oh, and Skywalker, your wife will be fine. The timeline where she dies is now averted. Turns out making your own choices actually does change fate. Who knew? Q vanished, leaving the Jedi Masters and the Sith Lord standing in Palpatine's office, facing an uncertain future where all the old rules no longer applied. The Republic's Senate chamber had never been so silent. Every senator, every representative, every being with a stake in galactic governance watched as the impossible unfolded before them. Palpatine, Supreme Chancellor, secretly Darth Sidious, stood in the center of the chamber without restraints, without guards, speaking openly about his decades of manipulation. Master Yoda and Master Windu flanked him on one side. Anakin Skywalker stood on the other. And in the galleries above, Q observed with undisguised fascination. I orchestrated the Naboo crisis, Palpatine said, his voice carrying to every corner through the chamber's acoustics. I manipulated the Trade Federation into blockading the planet, knowing the resulting political sympathy would elevate me to Supreme Chancellor. I created Count Dooku's separatist movement as opposition to ensure perpetual conflict. I commissioned the clone army under false pretenses, embedding behavioral chips that would have turned them against the Jedi on my command. Gasps and shouts erupted throughout the chamber. Senators rose in outrage, demanding immediate execution. Others called for restraint. The galaxy's political order was fracturing in real time. Senator Bail Organa stood, his voice cutting through the chaos. Why? Why reveal yourself now? You held absolute power. You could have activated your inhibitor chips, destroyed the Jedi, and declared yourself Emperor. Why surrender that? Palpatine's yellow eyes flickered briefly before returning to their human appearance. Because an entity from beyond our reality showed me that my path, every Sith's path, leads inevitably to failure. Power without evolution is just repetition. And He paused, something like genuine regret crossing his ancient face. I grew tired of following a script written millennia ago. Senator Padme Amidala stood, her voice shaking with controlled fury. You're responsible for millions of deaths, clone troopers, civilians, entire planets scarred by your manufactured war. What justice could possibly account for those crimes? None, Palpatine admitted. Justice cannot resurrect the dead or undo the suffering I've caused, but justice can prevent future cycles. That's what I'm offering. Not redemption, which I don't deserve, but information. Everything I know about Sith philosophy, about the dark side's corruption, about how beings fall into patterns of domination and destruction. Knowledge that could help the galaxy avoid creating another Sidious. Master Yoda struck his Geimer stick against the floor. From the Jedi, admission also required. Too rigid we became, too certain of our superiority. Blind to darkness beside us because question our own philosophy, we did not. Failed, we have as guardians. Evolved, we must, or doomed to repeat these failures we are. The admission sent shockwaves through the Jedi present in the chamber. For the Grand Master himself to acknowledge the Order's failures was unprecedented. Anakin stepped forward, addressing the Senate directly. Q placed our galaxy on trial, but the real trial was whether we could admit our limitations and choose to transcend them. The Jedi philosophy is incomplete. It denies emotion and breeds rigidity. The Sith philosophy is destructive. It embraces passion without restraint and breeds tyranny. Both have failed the galaxy repeatedly. So what do you propose? Senator Mon Mothma asked carefully. A complete reformation, Anakin said. A tribunal to judge Palpatine's crimes, not Jedi judgment, not Sith judgment, but representatives from across the galaxy determining appropriate consequences. Simultaneously, a reformation of how Force sensitives are trained and guided. No more absolutist philosophies, no more light versus dark, as if they're irreconcilable opposites. A new understanding that incorporates wisdom from both traditions while being enslaved to neither. Heresy, someone shouted from the Jedi gallery. Evolution, Anakin countered. I'm the chosen one, prophesied to bring balance to the Force. Maybe balance doesn't mean destroying the Sith or perfecting the Jedi. Maybe it means showing both sides they're wrong about everything fundamental. Q materialized in the center of the chamber, startling everyone. If I may interject, and I always may because I'm omnipotent, young Skywalker is absolutely correct. Your Force is unique in all the realities I've observed. A mystical energy that binds your galaxy together, gives certain beings incredible power, and simultaneously imprisons everyone in predetermined philosophical camps. Light or dark, Jedi or Sith, no middle ground allowed. He walked through the air, circling above the Senate floor. But the Force itself isn't divided. You people divided it because you're terrified of what it means to embrace all of existence. Joy and sorrow, passion and serenity, power and restraint. You created artificial boundaries and then spent millennia dying to defend them. You speak of our most sacred traditions, a Jedi Master called out. I speak of your most limiting prisons, Q corrected. And the beautiful thing is, you're finally ready to acknowledge it. Palpatine admitted his Sith path leads nowhere. Yoda admitted the Jedi philosophy is incomplete. Anakin proposed something neither tradition has considered. That's growth. That's evolution. That's what I came to see. Senator Organa stood again. What happens now? The Republic is built on structures Palpatine corrupted. The Jedi Order's authority is questioned. The clone army's loyalty is uncertain. How do we move forward? Carefully, Padme said, rising to stand beside Bail. We establish the tribunal Anakin proposed. We hold Palpatine accountable for his crimes while learning from his knowledge. We work with the Jedi to reform their traditions, opening Force training to those who seek balance rather than absolute light. We rebuild from honest foundations rather than corrupt ones. Master Windu's voice carried warning. This reformation could tear the galaxy apart. Not all Jedi will accept changing the code. Not all senators will support restructuring the Republic. We could face civil war worse than what Palpatine orchestrated. We could, Anakin acknowledged. But at least it would be genuine conflict over real principles, not manufactured war for one being's ambition. And maybe, just maybe, we prove we can evolve beyond our worst patterns. Q snapped his fingers. And suddenly everyone in the chamber could see what he saw. Timelines branching in infinite directions. Some showed the galaxy burning, reformation failing, old patterns reasserting themselves. Others showed something unprecedented. Jedi and former Sith working together. Force philosophy expanding beyond binary thinking. The Clone Wars end leading to genuine peace rather than empire. Your choice, Q said as the visions faded. I can't make you evolve. I can only show you that evolution is possible. The rest is up to you. Palpatine spoke again, his voice heavy. I offer myself to galactic justice without condition. Whatever punishment the tribunal decides, imprisonment, execution, forced labor rebuilding what I destroyed, I'll accept. Not because I seek redemption, but because I'm curious whether beings can truly break their cycles. Consider it my final experiment. Master Yoda closed his eyes in meditation, reaching into the Force. He felt its currents shifting, responding to the choices being made in this chamber. Light and dark still existed, but for the first time in millennia, they weren't at absolute war. They were possibilities, options, tools rather than masters. Begin we shall, Yoda said, opening his eyes. Tribunal for Sidious's crimes, reformation of Jedi philosophy, restructuring of Republic governance. A generation's work, this will be. But necessary work, essential work, work that breaks cycles. The Senate erupted in debate, some supporting the unprecedented reformation, others demanding traditional justice, still others calling for immediate military intervention. The galaxy's future hung in the balance, uncertain and chaotic. But it was genuine uncertainty, not predetermined fate. And that, Q reflected as he watched the chaos unfold, was exactly the point. The trial had been passed not through perfection, but through the courage to question everything and the wisdom to choose uncertain growth over comfortable stagnation. And in that choice, the Star Wars galaxy had finally, truly, begun to evolve. 6 months after Q's trial, the galaxy still trembled with transformation. Palpatine sat in a containment cell on a neutral space station, surrounded by representatives from 100 worlds who questioned him daily. The tribunal deliberated his fate, while recording every word of his testimony about Sith philosophy, dark side corruption, and the mechanics of his decades-long manipulation. He answered everything honestly, holding nothing back. Some days he seemed almost relieved to finally speak truth after a lifetime of lies. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant had changed. Master Yoda had opened the archives to independent scholars, allowing non-Jedi to study Force philosophy without committing to the Order. Training had been reformed. Younglings still learned discipline and restraint, but now they were also taught to acknowledge their emotions rather than suppress them. The phrase, "There is no emotion, there is peace," had been amended. There is emotion, and through understanding it, peace. Not all Jedi accepted the changes. Several masters had left the Order, unable to reconcile reformation with their lifetime of absolute belief. Others remained but resisted, creating tension that would take years to resolve. The galaxy's evolution wasn't clean or easy, but it was happening. Anakin stood in the temple's meditation chamber, Padme beside him. Her pregnancy was visible now, twins growing within her as Q had revealed. The nightmares of her death had faded. Q's confirmation that the timeline had shifted offered genuine peace. But more than that, Anakin had made different choices. He'd chosen honesty over secrecy, evolution over rigid tradition, and partnership over possession. "Do you think it's working?" Padme asked, one hand on her swollen belly. "This reformation you started?" "I don't know," Anakin admitted. "Some days it feels like we're making progress. Other days it feels like the galaxy's tearing itself apart. But at least we're trying something new instead of repeating the same failures." Obi-Wan entered the chamber, his expression weary but determined. He'd become one of the Reformation's strongest advocates, using his influence to bridge the gap between traditionalist Jedi and those embracing change. "The Council wants to see you, both of you." In the Council chamber, Master Yoda waited with Masters Windu, Plo Koon, and Shak Ti. The Circle of 12 was incomplete now. Some had left, others were off-world working on reformation efforts. But those who remained were committed to the difficult work of evolution. "A decision the Tribunal has reached," Yoda announced. "For Palpatine, for Sidious, sentence they have determined." "And?" Anakin asked. "Life imprisonment," Master Windu said. "On a secure facility where he'll continue providing testimony and knowledge about the Sith. No possibility of release, but his expertise will be used to prevent future Force users from falling into the same patterns. It's unprecedented." "Fitting," Padme said quietly. "He created a war that imprisoned the galaxy. Now he's imprisoned, but still serving the galaxy's future. There's a certain symmetry to it." Master Plo Koon leaned forward. "The real question is what happens next. The Reformation has begun, but it needs a face. Someone to represent the new philosophy, to show the galaxy that Force users can exist beyond the old binary." "You're asking Anakin to become a symbol," Padme said protectively. "Asking, we are, yes," Yoda confirmed. "Not demanding, free to choose, you are. But powerful symbol, the chosen one would be. Proof that balance is possible, that emotion and discipline can coexist, that the Force is one energy rather than two opposing sides." Anakin looked at Padme, then at the Masters. "I'll do it on one condition. I'm not hiding my marriage anymore. I'm not pretending I don't love my wife, that I won't love our children. If I'm going to represent a new philosophy, it has to include the truth that attachment isn't inherently corrupting, that love can be strength rather than weakness." Silence filled the chamber. Then Master Windu smiled slightly, a rare expression. "Agreed. The old code forbade attachment out of fear. The new understanding acknowledges that love, like any emotion, can be healthy or unhealthy depending on how it's approached. your marriage can be instructive. A new generation of Jedi, Master Shakti said thoughtfully, taught that the Force is vast and complex, that light and dark are aspects to understand rather than absolutes to worship or fear. It'll take decades to fully implement. Centuries, perhaps, Yoda added. But worthwhile work it is. Essential work. Q materialized in his usual corner, looking pleased. Well, look at you all. Actually growing. Actually changing. I have to admit, I didn't think you had it in you. Have you been watching this entire time? Master Windu asked with resignation. Of course, Q said cheerfully. Your reformation is the most interesting thing happening in several realities right now. Do you know how rare it is for an entire galaxy to question its fundamental assumptions and choose uncertain growth over comfortable certainty? Extraordinarily rare. I'm quite proud of you. Your trial is complete then, Anakin asked. My trial was complete the moment you chose to find a third option in Palpatine's office, Q confirmed. Everything since has been observation, and I'm pleased to report that the Q Continuum agrees. Your galaxy has demonstrated sufficient capacity for evolution to warrant continued existence. How generous, Padme said dryly. Q laughed. I like her. Skywalker, you married well. He turned more serious. But truly, what you've all accomplished in 6 months is remarkable. You've dismantled power structures millennia old. You've admitted failures most civilizations would die defending. You've chosen to rebuild from honest foundations rather than patch corrupt ones. That takes courage most beings don't possess. We had help, Obi-Wan said. Your intervention forced us to confront truths we'd been avoiding. I asked questions, Q corrected. You found the answers. There's a difference. He stood, preparing to depart. I'll continue observing, of course. Your reformation will face challenges. Traditionalists who resist change, Force users who fall to old patterns, political factions who try to exploit the chaos. But you've proven you can adapt. That's the essential quality. Before you go, Anakin said, why did you really come here? What were you looking for? Q paused, something vulnerable flickering across his eternal features. Meaning, he admitted. The Q Continuum is infinite power, with nothing to strive for. We've achieved everything, experienced everything, know everything. It becomes empty. So I search for beings who can surprise me, who can demonstrate that growth is possible, even when you think you've reached your limits. You, all of you, did that. And for an omnipotent being who thought he'd seen everything, that's a precious gift. He began to fade. Continue your work. Raise your children, Skywalker, in a galaxy that's learning to embrace complexity rather than false simplicity. Write new philosophies, Jedi, that acknowledge both wisdom and folly. Rebuild your Republic senators on foundations of honest governance rather than corrupt manipulation. And remember, evolution never ends. There's always another level of understanding to reach. Q's final words echoed as he vanished. May the Force be with you, and may you be worthy of the Force. The council chamber fell silent. Then Yoda chuckled softly, a sound of genuine amusement. Insufferable that entity is, but wise in his way. Right, he is. Evolution never ends. Always more to learn, always more to grow. Then we'd better get started, Master Windu said, standing with renewed purpose. We have a galaxy to reform, philosophies to rewrite, and generations of beings to teach that the Force is far more complex and beautiful than we ever admitted. Anakin took Padme's hand, feeling their twins moving within her. He thought about the timelines Q had shown him, the ones where he fell to darkness, where he became a perfect but empty Jedi, where he ran away from responsibility. None of those futures existed anymore because he'd chosen something unprecedented. He'd chosen to be fully himself, emotional and disciplined, powerful and restrained, attached and free. He'd chosen to acknowledge that he contained multitudes, that light and dark weren't his masters, but his tools, that balance meant embracing complexity rather than forcing simplicity. It was terrifying. It was liberating. It was, for the first time in his life, genuinely his choice. "Let's build something worth passing to our children," Anakin said to the council. "A galaxy that learns from its failures instead of repeating them. A Force philosophy that celebrates complexity instead of demanding conformity. A future that's uncertain, but honest." Master Yoda nodded, his ancient eyes gleaming with hope for the first time in years. "Begin, we shall. Long road ahead there is, but walk together it will be. And that perhaps is balance, not perfection, not certainty, just honest effort towards something better." The Star Wars galaxy would never be the same. The cycles that had defined it for millennia had finally, truly, been broken. What rose from the Reformation remained uncertain. It would be messy, complicated, full of setbacks and challenges. But it would be real, it would be honest, and it would be theirs to shape through genuine choice rather than predetermined destiny. And somewhere beyond reality, Q watched with ancient eyes and smiled, satisfied that at least one galaxy had learned what the continuum had forgotten, that the courage to grow, to question, to evolve beyond your limitations was the most powerful force in any universe. The reformation of the Star Wars galaxy would take generations to complete. Palpatine's testimony before the tribunal lasted 3 years, producing volumes of knowledge about Sith philosophy, dark side corruption, and the psychology of power that would inform Force training for centuries. He died in prison, neither redeemed nor regretful, but having contributed one final time to a galaxy he'd nearly destroyed. The Jedi Order transformed slowly, painfully. Some masters never accepted the changes and left to establish traditionalist enclaves in the Outer Rim. Others embraced the Reformation with such enthusiasm that they had to be reminded that some boundaries remained necessary. But gradually, a new understanding emerged. The Force was neither light nor dark, but one unified energy that required wisdom, restraint, passion, and compassion in balanced measure. Anakin Skywalker never became a traditional Jedi Master, but he became something perhaps more important, a teacher who demonstrated that Force users could acknowledge their full humanity while maintaining discipline. His children, Luke and Leia, grew up in a galaxy learning to embrace complexity rather than enforce simplicity. They would face their own challenges, their own choices, but they'd do so in a galaxy fundamentally changed by their father's courage to question everything. Q returned occasionally, never interfering but always observing. He watched the Reformation's successes and failures with equal interest, noting that evolution was never linear, but always possible for those brave enough to attempt it. The galaxy far, far away had finally learned that some cycles could be broken, that destiny was not absolute, and that the most powerful choice any being could make was to think for themselves rather than follow ancient scripts. It had taken an omnipotent entity's trial to force that realization, but in the end, the galaxy saved itself through the courage to admit its limitations and the wisdom to choose uncertain growth over comfortable stagnation. Balance, it turned out, was not a destination, but a continuous journey, messy, complicated, and utterly worth undertaking. May the Force be with you. More stories await.